Apple just made their biggest ever U.S. investment of $500 billion, creating thousands of jobs for Americans. John Oliver's on 60 Minutes, fearing for his life because he told viewers not to vote for Trump. Dan Bongino has Adam Schiff shaking in his boots. Also, Democratic moron Jasmine Croket says that the Republicans are the ones spreading misinformation. Mike Benz tells us exactly why Dan Bongino was the right and perfect pick for FBI Deputy Director. And MSNBC's lawyer schools a panel of low IQ Democrats live on air. Let's get it.
See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
Get it. Apple have just invested an absolutely crazy, record-breaking amount, as you can see from Trump's tweet here, $500 billion in the United States of America. The reason is because of the faith that they have in what Trump is doing and his team. This is what this is going to do. $500 billion into the U.S. economy, over 20,000 new jobs, a new Houston AI server factory, new Detroit manufacturing academy, doubling R&D funds to $10 billion in America. This is absolutely massive. This is bringing jobs back to America. This is what tariff does. And look at all the investments you can see here under President Trump. 1 month into office, the guy is killing it. Let's get to Fox News, and then Axios co-founder Mike Allen tells us why this Apple announcement is so freaking massive. Let's go.
$1 trillion. That's the largest ever U.S. spending plan for the world's biggest company, and it comes with thousands of new jobs across multiple states. Now, as you mentioned, we knew this was coming as President Trump teased it on Friday, and then Apple CEO Tim Cook was at the White House on Thursday. Apple is spending 50% more this year in 2025 than it did during the first Trump term. So $500 billion over 4 years this time. 4 years, not 5 years like they usually do. 20,000 new jobs, a new AI server factory in Houston, Texas, and that's significant for Apple, who tends to farm out their AI server needs to third-party providers like AWS. Also, you got a new Detroit Academy, doubling their research and development fund. Now, Apple CEO Tim Cook says we're bullish on the future of American innovation, and we're proud to build on our long-standing U.S. investments. Now, Apple tends to roll out these type of massive U.S. investment plans every few years, but this is the biggest one yet, and it's also 45% more than what they committed during the Biden term in 2021. Now, some of this can be also attributed to the higher spend in this new AI arms race that we're in, where Apple has to keep up with everybody else who's boosting their AI spending by at least 20% this year. Apple also tells me, Maria, that they are now the largest customer of that $12 billion Arizona chip factory from TSMC, which also just started shipping chips last month. Remember that Apple stock, though, still underperforming this year, and that's because of concerns on those increased China tariff threats of another 10%. Now, they got a waiver last time. This time, you heard President Trump say, as great a negotiator as Tim Cook is, Apple may not be as lucky. But Maria, as you know, if someone's written the textbook when it comes to dealing with the Trump administration from the corporate side, it's Tim Cook at Apple.
All right, Susan.
Breaking news from Apple just in the last half hour. The company saying it's going to now work with Foxconn to build an AI server factory in Texas by 2026. So not that far away. Apple saying it will add about 20,000 research and development jobs across the United States. The company also planning to spend $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years. CEO Tim Cook meeting with President Trump at the White House on Thursday. The company facing the prospect of higher tariffs on its goods made in China. Joining us right now is Axios co-founder Mike Allen. And I think the big question all of this raises this morning is this kind of announcement enough to somehow satisfy President Trump to carve out some kind of tariff relief if, in fact, there are going to be tariffs on China specific to Apple?
Yeah, it absolutely, Andrew, is a massive down payment. And I think we're headed exactly where you're saying, pulling back on those tariffs as part of the deal-making negotiating. But I'm so glad Squawk is playing up this story. This Apple announcement this morning, which just popped 6 a.m. Eastern, all the details are up, the lead story on Axios. This is a landmark story for a couple of reasons. One, the effort by the president to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. This is a massive commitment to that. And as we say in our story, this gives Trump the leverage to say to other companies, Apple can do this. Apple is bringing these jobs into the U.S. Apple is investing in the U.S. Why can't you? Why won't you? And the statement out this morning from Apple CEO Tim Cook, talking about being bullish on the future of America, talking about writing a extraordinary new chapter in the history of American innovation. So that's one bucket. Two, there's an incredible footprint for this. This is all across the United States, and it's part of the big story that Axios has been telling, that it's no longer just the coast. Look at where some of these big investments are. The swing states of Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Nevada, red states, the massive investment that you were talking about in Texas, a big innovation lab in Michigan. So a footprint all across the country. And third, if you look at how the U.S. is going to have a sustained recovery, it's going to be about building things, making things, doing that more in the U.S. This is a big step toward that.
And now to the juicy part. Adam Schiff, who was pardoned by Joe Biden, but he was only pardoned for the January 6th stuff. Not all the other nonsense he's been up to, not the Russia collusion hoax. And Dan Bongino, Trump's new deputy FBI director, has a bone to pick with him. Now, this is a bit of an older clip telling us exactly how he would go after him. The deep state right now, with him and Kash Patel in the FBI, is about to get routed. And after the Dan Bongino clip, we're going to look at a clip of MSNBC's lawyer schooling them live on air. Let's get it.
Particularly good mood today. If you only knew. You ever hear that House on Fire song? It's one of his old songs. This guy's on fire, just like the Bailey song. That house on fire. He is on fire, Schiff. Well, 100% success rate of failing. Why is Adam Schiff so worried? Folks, I strongly encourage you to go back and take another look today at the Russia collusion hoax. I know it's a story that's old and a lot of people want to move on. I'm going to be straight with you. I don't want to move on. We had the FBI in conjunction with the Department of Justice, officials in Congress, foreign governments, and intel people fabricate a story, invent a story that could have caused and done serious long-term harm to international relations with a nuclear-powered foe. It's kind of a big freaking deal. I'm not letting it go. And you listen to me. This is going to be very important in the coming days. I'm not letting this go. I want to find out what happened because it can never happen again. Not to a Democrat, not to a Republican, not to a Libertarian, not to any United States citizen. You do not get to alter or try to change the course of electoral politics by fabricating a story, hijacking the justice system then to give the patina of truth to a fake story. You don't get to do that. Why do I bring that up now? Because who is the ringmaster of that circus? Yes, Adam Schiff. And no, I'm not letting it go.
Over the weekend, I read all these headlines, and the headlines were like, Trump suffers legal blows. Another one was Trump get hit with unexpected loss. Here was one, major DEI legal setback. And I think the concern I have is that people watching those headlines, especially people who don't like Trump, are going to think Trump is getting his butt kicked. And then when he wins, invariably, he's going to win some of these cases. They're going to say, well, what happened to all the butt kicking, right? Yeah. And here's why. These are not major setbacks. First reason, we are at the stay stage. In other words, in almost all of these cases, the court is issuing a stay. That is a pause. By definition, it is not on the merits. Nobody's winning or losing on the merits. They're hitting the pause button until they can decide the case on the merits. And by the way, just like Danielle said, all of this is exhibition games or friendlies, as they say in soccer. Yeah. They don't count. They don't count until they get to the last court they get to, which in most cases, because they're of unique constitutional issues, is going to be the Supreme Court. So these are not blows to the Trump administration. I don't see them that way. The other thing, and again, Danielle brought this up, the Trump administration totally expects they're going to lose in court a lot. Do you know what it costs to do an executive order? A piece of paper and a Sharpie. That's it. And they can go right back to the drawing board. One of these courts said, hey, the language was too vague. You know what that tells them? Just go draft another one. It's not like legislation where you need a bunch of people to agree on something. It is a pen and a piece of paper, and that's it. And here's the other thing. You could look at this as the headlines say, Trump losing here and there in court. Here's the way I see it. I'll give you an example. The Ninth Circuit on the the birthright citizenship issue. Yeah. Yes, the Ninth Circuit just a couple days ago said, no, you don't get a stay. You can't ask us on an emergency basis to overcome the stay at the lower court level. But they were never going to win that. The odds of winning that emergency motion were very slim. The more important message I take away is that the Trump administration wasn't even willing to wait for the, a few weeks or months of a stay on this major piece of administration policy. They don't want to wait. They're going to fight at every single turn. And that means appealing absolutely everything with the knowledge that they're going to lose some of them because it costs them nothing. Executive orders are the easiest thing to issue. So, as much as I came here and I thought, well, these headlines really don't tell the whole story, yeah. I wonder, Danielle, you might be with me on this to some degree because you made a lot of the points that I had to make. I do not see this as Trump losing over and over and over again. I think the more important, bigger story is that they're not going to stop. And they're going to keep fighting at every turn, and they are going to win some of these.
Everybody's talking about the Epstein client list, which I want to know about also. But also, I can't wait to find out more about these two freaking losers that we know so little about. How is that? Can't wait to find that out. Now, let's get to John Oliver, who was just on 60 Minutes. Can't even make eye contact with the host, saying that he fears for his life because he told the American people to not vote for Trump. What happened to late night TV? And then we got a clip of Jasmine Croket saying that because of X and Fox News, that the Republicans are the ones spreading misinformation and that the Democrats have to find a new communication ecosystem. This lady is absolutely ridiculous. Let's go.
Last season, you told your viewers, do not vote for Donald Trump.
Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and say that that is not a partisan thing to do, to say don't vote for Donald Trump. I think it's good advice.
But more than 77 million people voted for Donald Trump. Does your show speak to them?
I really hope it speaks to some of them, yes, because most of those main stories that we're talking about are not actually party political. Those are lasting problems that have been there before the last 2 or 3 presidents and may well be there for after the next 2 or 3.
If you were to look into your crystal ball, what's next?
Other than living in the president's gulags in the future, that's what my crystal ball is.
Where we are talking about what we're going to do and we're talking about what we are doing. But a matter of amplifying those things is a lot more difficult. And I think that it's important that those of us that sit in Congress have to figure out what is really the best way for us to communicate. And we've got to settle into that and recognize that not everyone's going to sit on a podcast, not everyone's going to be social media savvy, but they are going to have to find their communication lane. And so I do think that it is something that we struggle with. We know right now we obviously have X that's owned by Elon. We've also got, you know, the other news network that I won't name and some other things. So there's an actual ecosystem that pumps out this disinformation consistently on behalf.
Yeah, you want to talk about ridiculous? These Democrats, this is Jen Psaki losing her mind on her show and on this article about Trump's messy mass firing spree. Look at this. Okay, the same lady that was gleeful when they fired all the Keystone XLR pipeline guys. And also, take a look at this. This is what she said when the first group of service members, remember, like during the COOF, the pandemic, ambulance workers, police officers, pilots, military people that didn't want to take the jab because they had a good head on their shoulders. This is what she said. The requirement will help ensure readiness. Now, next clip we have, on the next couple of clips, you're going to look at National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who is just ruling out American troops going into the Ukraine. This is a hammer that's been dropped, and also great news. No U.S. troops in the Ukraine after a peace deal, and NATO membership for the Ukraine is off the table. This is what we want to see. But first, we're going to look at a small clip from Tim Burchett talking about the emails that were sent by the Doge team to all these agencies requiring people to let them know what they do for their work. Look, these people, a lot of them are not even at the office. They're at home, chilling. Who knows what they do? And if you're in the private sector, like he mentions in the video, You have to do this stuff. Let's get it.
To challenging federal employees on their accomplishments and how that's now being asked to thousands, tens of thousands of people across the country through social media.
I think it's a great idea. You do it in private business all the time. You have to have accountability. You have to show your work. You have to show what you've done. And now we're saying the federal government should do the same. And some folks are upset about it. Obviously, they're upset because they can't show what they've done because they probably haven't done much. They're mad because they have to go back to work. I've been contacted by people that are very upset that they have to go back to work because they've moved. They don't even live in the area anymore, but they thought they could work from home. And, you know, the post-COVID days are over. We need to get people back to work. We need to show what they're doing, and we need to show the efficiencies of government, which have not been done in quite some time.
That is not back on the table. I do not see the United States having Ukraine enter into NATO and then having United States troops essentially obligated immediately in terms of Article 5 or coming to have U.S. troops coming directly in for the defense of Ukraine. That is very different. I want to be clear on that. We have President Macron coming. We have Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom coming. That's very different than the U.S. commitment to NATO and existing NATO countries. We are absolutely committed to NATO writ large, our Article 5 treaty agreements with other NATO countries, but the security guarantees for Ukraine is a different conversation.
We're going to wrap it up with Mike Benz telling us exactly why he loves the pick of Dan Bongino, and I think he's spot on with this. But first, look at this. This is Trump's approval rating across the board from the American public. People love what he's doing. He's doing all the common sense stuff. No men in women's spaces, no men in women's sports, getting rid of DEI. And even people on the left, and I see them in the comment section of these videos, are agreeing with this. They might not like Trump on every aspect, but they love the common sense stuff, the stuff that was normal up till 5 minutes ago, that men just can't magically become women. Ridiculous. This is very optimistic and nice to see. Now let's get to Mike Benz.
We're pouring one out for Dan Bongino. All right. Wow. The other great thing about this is one of my concerns about Kash at FBI was that if he wasn't surrounded by good people, a good chief of staff, a good deputy director, that he could get rolled because the coalition forces within the bureau would, you know, he'd get lied to by his by his deputy. He'd get lied to and outmaneuvered by chief of staff type thing. And you know, it's a lot of political capital expenditure to do these sorts of things. There are Republicans, for example, who are in on the J6 Fedsurrection. They're not necessarily going to love the idea of confirming Dan's nomination, just as they surely did not love the idea of Kash Patel. But honestly, I think the threat of Elon primarying people who don't vote for confirmation is moving the Republicans. So anyway, I'm just overjoyed at a personal level. I met Dan in person, you know, several times. It was that night, November 5th, 2024. Dan asked me to come do the election night party. So I spent all night, election night, with Dan, on live with him, covering the most important election in the history of human life forms, the 2024 election. We will remember that election for the rest of our lives. The way my parents, I think, and everyone, remember where they were when JFK got shot. I'll never forget that night. And I spent that whole night with Dan. And now look at him. Look at yous. Would you look at yous? Deputy Director of the FBI. And none of the other homies leaked it in advance. And it shows that the level of loyalty to Kash, that it's not, because typically the way it goes is this in DC. Okay, you want someone who's based in as the head of the bureau, head of an agency. Okay, then what comes back is like the John Thune faction, the Mitch McConnell faction, the Paul Ryan faction. It's like, okay, we don't want him, but we'll vote to confirm him if you put in our guy as DepSec and our guy as chief of staff and our girl here as assistant secretary. So they have bumper cars on the whole thing. You can never get your agenda done because even though you got the top dog, the whole lieutenant class is mutinous. The whole ship gets scurvy. So, wow. All right. So, way to go. Way to go, Dan. Man, what a story he's had, you know? And just by following his North Star, you know?